episode of Talking Marijuana, where we talk about all things marijuana, legalization, medical marijuana, stoner stories, you name it, we're going to talk about it. And we're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the patient operator of California Patients Alliance. I always stumble on that for some reason.
No.
6 years I've been the patient operator of California Patients Alliance on Melrose here in Los Angeles, and with me...
I'm Yamileth Bolanos, and I'm patient operator for Purelife Wellness Center on La Cienega. I'm also the founder of the Greater Los Angeles Collectors Alliance. GLACA has been the sign of excellence in medical marijuana in the city of Los Angeles since 2006. And with us today is...
And I am Dan Gabriel, comedian, marijuana enthusiast, Scorpio, and I like pina coladas and walks in the rain.
Oh, that's awesome. Very, very interesting.
Thank you.
And our next correspondent is in
Vegas.
In Vegas today. Don, hi.
Well, hello from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Duncan, the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
Awesome. And our guest today is Diane Goldstein from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on board. Appreciate it.
We'd love to have you on board.
having you.
I don't usually like sitting next to people with badges on, but LEAP is an amazing organization that we're going to find out about a lot later in the show. Maybe we'll start out with our foreign correspondent, Don Duncan, over there in Las Vegas. Don, how are you doing? What's going on? What are you in Vegas for?
Well, things are going great. I'm actually out in Vegas for a speaking engagement at a conference, this one non-medical cannabis related, and I'm doing a little strategic planning training for the conference attendees here. So it's maybe a little dull, but it's good stuff to know. So I'm out here for a couple of days in the desert. Hopefully I have a little chance to see some of the city as well.
We have heard that in Vegas, actually in Nevada, they are coming up with the rules for medical marijuana in Nevada, and that they're actually going to be pretty pro-patient at this point. Diane and I were speaking about it before the show. Diane, what were you mentioning about that?
You know, Don, I actually just got back from Vegas. I was at Freedom Fest, and there was a couple panels on cannabis, and apparently the medical marijuana laws have been clearly shifted in Las Vegas, and they're taking a pro-business and pro-patient basis where it's going to have reciprocity with other states if you're a medical marijuana patient, that if you're an investor from outside of the state, you're going to be allowed to open up a dispensary. And so there's some really, really good clarifications, including that it's for profit, which is I've never understood the nonprofit model, as I believe that, you know, this is America and everybody should be rewarded for being good business owners.
Well, yes, that nonprofit business was controversial in California, and of course it was a compromise that our state legislature came to with law enforcement. Law enforcement hoping, of course, to take any profit motive out. The irony being that a nonprofit organization or a nonprofit corporation, of course, can make tons and tons of money. So, you know, in some respects, it's a moot point. But I'm glad to hear Nevada's moving forward. That's really a great news for patients here who've been waiting a very, very long time for a regulated legal access to medical cannabis.
Yeah. One of the other news items that I was looking at this week was taking place in Arizona, which was kind of the opposite of what's happening in Nevada. And in Arizona, where it's already passed by a vote of the people for medical marijuana, but has not been fully implemented in any way, shape, or form in that state, there was an editorial in the Arizona Capital Times by a former police officer who basically started out his editorial by saying, police officers are trained in not getting involved in the emotional part of an issue, but to try to approach it from a legal and practical and logical form. And what his editorial basically focused on is that Arizona is starting to lie in order not to implement the medical marijuana program. They're stating false figures, Again, this article is from the Arizona Capital Times. But his biggest argument, I'm going to go to the end of this article, and he says, he'd like to end on an issue that lacks serious credibility. Opposition groups such as Keep Arizona Drug Free often quote the FDA or the DEA or the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and the Arizona Drug Free states on its website that marijuana is a Class 1 illegal substance under the Controlled Substance Act because it has been found to have no acceptable medical use. And then the writer goes on to say this is true, but here's where he takes issue. A year later, after that was brought out, in 2002, Health and Human Services filed a U.S. patent, and the patent is for cannabinoids found in the marijuana plant, and the patent states the following: cannabinoids have been found to have an antioxidant of course. Have been found to have antioxidant properties. The newfound properties make cannabinoids useful in the treatment and of a wide variety of inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. So the hypocrisy is literally on the page. They say there's no medical use, and then the government itself has come out and said that there is a medical use. So I'm going to try to tie this into something that's happened with ASA this week, and I think you, the organization that you represent, is going to be taking this appeal back to the federal government to reclassify medical marijuana not as a Schedule I drug. Am I right?
That's right, Barry. And let me say that's a great segue. Well done. We've been involved in a coalition called the Campaign to Reschedule Cannabis. And this effort goes back 10 years, a little over 10 years now ago. We filed a petition as part of this coalition to reschedule cannabis under federal law. The Controlled Substances Act has a series of 5 schedules where medicines are classified based on their danger, their potential for abuse, and their medical use, with Schedule 1 being those drugs that are very dangerous and have no accepted medical value, and Schedule 5 are over-the-counter drugs, and then everything in between. Ironically, by the way, synthetic marijuana is on Schedule 3, which are ordinary prescription drugs right in the middle. So we filed a petition, and the DEA actually stalled for 9 years in responding to that petition. They just said nothing, which is a common federal tactic. So in 2012, we sued the DEA. We forced them to respond to the petition, and they did exactly what we thought they would do. They said there's no medical value to marijuana, ergo your petition is denied. And that's what we wanted in this case, because we wanted to go to the appellate court and sue the DEA and force a change in policy. So we did that last year. Unfortunately, we did lose at the appellate level. That's not too surprising given the long history. But what was particularly egregious in this appellate decision regarding the classification of cannabis under federal law is that they actually changed the standard of acceptable medical value just for this case. They came up with a whole new standard. Up until now, the standard was you had to produce peer-reviewed scientific evidence to prove there was medical value. We submitted 200 studies for the peer-reviewed journals about the medical efficacy of cannabis. And then, of course, when the DEA testified, they changed the standard and said, no, we need phase 2 and 3 clinical trials, and they need to be complete. That's virtually impossible to do with a Schedule I drug in the political context of the United States right now. And so because they changed the bar, the justices at the appellate level denied the petition. And so now we have to go to the Supreme Court and argue not just on the merits of the case, but on this whole new standard that was set quite arbitrarily and without any, of course, scientific input, just a standard set by law enforcement to say that we're going to set a higher bar for cannabis than, say, for Vioxx or any of the other really dangerous prescription drugs that have already been approved.
Dawn.
So that's where we're at right now. We filed a petition yesterday with the Supreme Court, and we are waiting to hear whether or not they're going to accept that case for review.
Dawn, this is Diane Goldstein. Something that's really interesting is one of the things that the DEA has very effectively done is I call the dumbing down of American law enforcement with regard to both medical marijuana, recreational, legalized marijuana, and hemp. And I think that's the thing that the public doesn't understand is how the DEA undermines the rule of law. And I think that's something that all of us need to address. I mean, one of the things that they did with the hemp bill in Kentucky, and then with also the hemp bill that, thank goodness, was just finally passed in Congress, Congress is they lobbied very hard, and they lobbied based on lies, saying that law enforcement would be unable to tell the difference between between marijuana and hemp. And so it's like, and I don't
I'm
understand.
not sure that was a lie.
Yeah, well, no, you know what? It is a lie because I worked in law enforcement for a long time, and we're a lot smarter than the DEA suggests to the public. And so, I think it's time to really call the DEA out very publicly, and I'm hoping that organizations like the DEA or the DPA, the Drug Policy Alliance, and LEAP, and MPP and ASA really collaborate to do a very strategic plan to dismantle that organization, because I think that the DEA should be abolished as a federal program.
Wow.
Oh,
That's a bold statement.
Very bold. Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Also, the elected politicians, Ms. Dianne Feinstein said that she wouldn't approve the hemp bill because she was afraid of, what was it? The psychoactive in hemp would, affect children somehow. It was like such a ridiculous statement. And she's really tight friends with the DEA. When we were in her office in Sacramento, that's all she has in her office is full of law enforcement, which is good, but all kinds of DEA stuff. So I'm sure that she got that statement from them as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe there's kids jumping rope made of hemp and getting high from touching the rope. Man, I gotta jump more rope.
I have a jump rope for you made of hemp. I wear hemp t-shirts and feel high all day. Don?
I think people would jump rope all day long if that were true.
Or no, if it made you high, you might stop after a while and
It would be one of
relax.
the most fit nations in the world. Only that could happen.
We had a guest on last week, Miko Perez, who is the founder of the Unconventional Autism Foundation, and her son is Joey. She's also known as Joey's mom. It's a moniker that she's picked up. She's done a lot of work for autism and autistic children through her experiences through her child. When we left the studio, a little later on that day, I listened to an NBC report, and the NBC had a report on about medical marijuana and children. They had a different mom on who was talking about her child who responded very well to medical marijuana as a last-ditch attempt by the parents to find some solace, some help for their child. And this child that was in the news report was on 17 different medications, prescriptive medications. And when they finally got around to putting a doctor on this news report, and the doctor said, well, it's nice that in the short term it's working for this child, but we still don't know the long-term effects, and the possibility that it's a gateway drug is still very high. Now, I almost hit somebody before I stopped my car, because the argument of this gateway drug, first of all, the child's on 17 very strong medications. It's ridiculous to think that if you're going to give them marijuana, that maybe they're going to grow up and have a slower learning rate, or the sense is that they're going to grow up at least and get off of these medications that people have put them on. So I was very upset with the medical side of that, and I feel that comes from the industry,
it's the pharmacy. It's the law enforcement lobbying, it's the pharmaceutical industry, it's the alcohol industry. And really, when you start talking about gateway, what you have to look at is right now we're on a continuum that marijuana is not effectively regulated, and that's why there's chaos. Quite frankly,
yes,
law enforcement will tell you that we are proactive and we're controlling our drug problems. We're not, because the true gateway is prohibition.
Absolutely.
That is the reason why people associate marijuana and kids, is because there's more opportunities to get it. When's the last time you saw Jim Beam being dealt on a public high school or a private high school campus? It doesn't occur.
Yeah, well, we definitely see that, and I feel like it's the upward battle to battle those lobbies, prescriptive medicine, law enforcement, without organizations like LEAP that have come forward, and the union, like here in California, the UFCW has stepped up. Without those organizations stepping up, we have so little clout as a unit, marijuana users, patients. We just have a very difficult time with that. Let's we're going to take a little break here. We're going to come back on the other side of the break, talk with Diane a little bit more about LEAP, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FY. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We are talking marijuana here with Barry, Yami, Dan, and Diane. Diane, we're going to let Don chat one little thing. You have a conference coming up in August. Am I correct, Don?
That's right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, we were talking before the break about the Supreme Court, and the courts are one way that we deal with, changing laws and protecting patients, but the legislature is another. And here in California, we're going to be bringing patients back to the state legislature to work on medical marijuana issues on August 12th. And so if you're hearing this podcast before August 12th, we would love to have you in Sacramento that day. What we're going to do is spend the morning talking about some important legislation that's pending before the state legislature. We're going to train people. We're going to teach them about the bill, and then we're going to give them some talking points to get out to those law offices. And then everybody who registers for our California Summer Lobby Day, we're going to take those people down to the state capitol. We're going to make appointments for them with our lawmakers, and we're going to get them face-to-face with the people who are going to vote on those bills. So it's a really important way for people to participate, because research shows and our experience shows that it really, really matters when lawmakers hear face-to-face, in person from their constituents. It's really the most powerful kind of lobbying that a citizen can do. And so we're really encouraging folks to turn out and do it. And if you're not in California, or you can't make it on August 12th, you can do it anyway. You can actually just go in and meet at district offices with the staff, with lawmakers. They do this all the time, and they really do welcome the input from constituents. So I want to encourage people to feel empowered to go and do that. And if you're feeling like, I can't be a lobbyist, I don't know what to say or what to do, you can actually go to our website at americansforsafeaccess.org. That's the word for FOR, americansforsafeaccess.org. And go to our online training center, and you can actually watch videos and read a workbook there about how to talk to a lawmaker, how to make an appointment, how to be an effective citizen lobbyist. So I would encourage everyone to feel empowered and do this. When you walk out of that meeting, you're going to feel 10 feet tall, because you're really, at that point, that's right where the rubber meets the road when it comes to state legislation. So August 12th for us, you can get all the details at americansforsafeaccess.org, or just go out and do it wherever you live. There's a district office somewhere near your house, and you can get out and be a part of that solution, and not just sit at home and worry about it or complain about it.
That's great, Don. We can speak from experience. I know Yami and I were there last year at the State House here in California to do this exact thing for a different bill that we were very successful in lobbying for. And It did. It made me personally feel 10 feet tall to engage in the issues, and it's really not difficult. It's basically going into an office and talking to people about your experience, or what the talking points are that you might want to get out to these legislators. But it was pretty easy, and they were very receptive. And I encourage everyone as well to participate in some way in this great lobby day.
There's power in numbers.
What was noteworthy to me about that lobby day is the day I came back afterwards to do more lobbying in the state capitol. The mood in the building changed after that lobby day. They saw this issue in an entirely new way, and I thought that was really impressive. And that's the kind of thing, lobbyists can't do that. Only people can do that.
Yeah.
So I thought we did this great job, and I hope we're going to do it again.
There's power in numbers, and I believe that when the last conference that the last lobby day that we went to, it was very evident that there was so many people there. People were impressed with how many people turned out, and it was very empowering. So I urge everyone to come along as well and help out with this.
And I want to encourage everybody out there who went out to protest for the Trayvon thing, who went and all the people on the Golden Gate Bridge and all the people in Oakland protesting and rioting. You can actually do something if you go to Sacramento and show up that day, whereas if you're protesting for something going on in Florida, you're not really making as much of a difference.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
it matters to speak up, but there's a time, there's a time to go out and protest, and then there's a time to go in and sit down at the table and negotiate. And so that's what I encourage everyone to do, is to be a part of this as well, so that you're fighting out both fronts. There's a time to be in the street and a time to be in the State House.
and where do you need to be right now, or do you need to get back to a conference?
Well, you know what? I wish I could stick around and hear the rest of this. I'm going to a conference here in Las Vegas. I've got a speaking engagement, so I'm going to sign off now. And I will join you guys again next week for Talking Marijuana.
Well, thanks very much,
Don.
Don.
Bye, sweetie.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, so
Bye.
Don makes some really good points there.
You know what's really interesting is I think one of the things that we have done as citizens is we have abdicated our role in government, and we've allowed our government officials to really just kind of impose their will without listening to us.
And that is not more evident than in Los Angeles in the May elections. The 5 councilmen that wanted to ban medical marijuana in the city, their districts are the ones that voted overwhelmingly to put D in place.
No, absolutely.
And so they all wanted to ban it, but their constituents were the ones that voted the most. And so that is totally, what you're saying. That's evidence of that. Those people never once thought about their constituents or how they felt. Obviously, because they wanted to ban, yet those districts are the ones that had the most votes for Prop D.
Yeah, and what Don's talking about, which I think is incredibly important, is it speaks to the powers. One of the things that I think LEAP brings to the table is that we're both consensus builders, and we understand kind of how the system works and operates. And I think for a lot of people, they don't. And so one of the things that I think is so important, what people don't understand, is that there is a power in a collective voice. In law enforcement, it's described literally as a force multiplier. When you get basically a number of individuals together and you develop their strengths. So what Yami's good at, Diane isn't. But what I'm good at, Barry isn't. Right. And so what law enforcement has done very effectively is taken each member's strength to develop a plan on how to deal with issues and problems. And what you're seeing, the movement, and I think it's growing, and I think it's maturing, and it's understanding the importance of being in coalitions and coalition building. So, Don and ASA and GLACA and others is what LEAP is encouraging them to do is to become part of the Coalition for Cannabis and Policy Reform, which is now made up of a tremendous amount of coalition partners. The Drug Policy Alliance is involved, Marijuana Policy Project, the ACLU, the NAACP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and what we're trying to do is coalesce everybody within our movement. And there's different opinions, and we respect different opinions. There are those that believe that 2014 should be the year for legalization. There's others like myself and others who believe that 2016 makes more sense from a political strategy. But all of us have the same message, is that we need to end cannabis prohibition in order to really, in some aspects, to save California. Quite frankly, is the amount of money that we waste that should be going to higher education or job infrastructure, or K through 12 that shouldn't be going into law enforcement. Is there's a lot of different things that are going on, and so it's very powerful when you guys show up in front of your legislator with a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, or with a member from MPP or the DPA that talks about the harms of the policy, because we can show a face and a story, and our legislators are not hearing that enough.
That's a interesting conversation that I've had with Don in the past. I remember sitting maybe like 6 years ago when I first opened our dispensary, and was getting involved with groups that were advocating for patients' rights. And I remember saying to Don one time, you got MPP, you got DPA, every one of them calls me individually and asks for my support as a dispensary operator here in Los Angeles to support their organization. And you're all fighting for my same dollar. And really what you all need to do is sit down at a table, get your priorities together, and let's work on the priorities that we have in common together, and not be at each other's throat trying to get those dollars that need to be, organizations need to have funding, they need to be able to pay their people and stuff. But overall and overarching, it's nice to have other organizations that have now come into the picture, LEAP, and again, the Union of UFCW in California and nationally, to bring a sort of third-party, not respectability, more just a voice that's not competitive. A lot of these early marijuana organizations
were competitive,
wanted to do the right thing, but they compete against each other.
They're competing for dollars.
And so nice to have a voice that comes in and goes, great, here's what you're all saying. Let's get together and do this together, and where we disagree, we can, peacefully talk about these things.
And what's really interesting, because I think there's always going to be a competition for dollars.
Absolutely.
And because that's the nonprofit world, and unfortunately that's, that how California's been geared up in this whole nonprofit thing. But one of the things I think that's critically important is for all patients to recognize is we know that until there's an appropriate regulatory process set up in California, that patients and business owners are not going to be safe. I take it a step further that it's not until we have full legalization in California will we ever be able to eliminate the threat of the federal government, because there really are, the three big entities right now that I think are problematic for us in California is the DEA, the California Narcotics Officers Association, and the California Police Chiefs. Now, it was interesting as I watched the public safety committee meeting on Steinberg's bill on on Senate Bill 439 that just came out. That clarified the law.
And that Senate bill is to bring a regulatory system to all of California.
All of California.
Which we don't have at the
moment. Which we don't have at the moment. And it was nice for the first time to see John Lovell, the CNOA and the California chief lobbyist, get spanked by Darrell Steinberg. Not badly, but enough to say, you know what, right now you're part of the problem. We need to have the chiefs, we need to have the narcs, we need to have the California sheriffs as stakeholders. But the problem is right now, specifically with the CNOA, is what people don't understand. As a nonprofit, they make somewhere between $2.5 million to $3 million a year in training other law enforcement officers, and they use taxpayer money quite specifically to pay a lobbyist to undermine what the people want. And the California chiefs are doing the same. And I think this really brings us to the greater discussion of crony capitalism, and which is exactly what's wrong with politics. And in California, we've been decidedly democratic by vote for a long time, and yet every time I kind of tend to walk in and do lobbying, I get the whole, well, what does public safety think about this? And that's not the questions that should be asked by our legislators, is what do the people want? Because law enforcement at its truest purpose should not be allowed to make the laws. I'm tired of hearing law enforcement officials say, we just enforce them, and on the back door pay a lobbyist. You know, the California Chiefs pays a lobbyist about $150,000 every 2 legislative years, and the California Narcotics Officers pays them about $120,000. And so, you know, and then you start, so he's making bank to basically be a mouthpiece to say no, 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 and spread those lies and the disinformation. Right. So what LEAP does is it brings credibility when we write a letter and say, hey, you know what? The chiefs and the CNOA are being disingenuous. What will bring clarity is appropriate regulation, which is why we sent a letter for Steinberg's bill and for Amiano's bill and other bills to show there's a different way of doing business. We have to get away from tough on policing to being smart on crime. Mm-hmm. You know, we're being tough on crime right now. It's a waste of fiscal dollars. We're not being smart on crime.
Do you feel there's an ear in the legislatures around the country for LEAP, for this counter? I mean, because when I go, let's just say, to city council, you know, law enforcement can do no wrong in the chambers of city council. They literally can. You know, they are bowed to and praised, and they just do no wrong. Now, you've just laid out where law enforcement does do wrong, and it's pretty obvious that they, you know, are paying people to be self-serving, to initiate policy. So, do you feel that LEAP has that sort of stopgap where legislators are listening to you?
We're starting to. It's really interesting. I came on to LEAP. Let me talk a little bit about what LEAP is.
You know what?
So people,
let's
we'll do it at the next segment.
We'll go to a little break here, and then we'll come back. We'll do a little history of LEAP and other things that LEAP's working on, because I know there's an issue that we definitely want to get to with women. Okay, well, let's get back, and we'll see you after the break. Have a great time. Watch my glasses disappear.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome back. We're still talking marijuana here around this square table. And we're back with Diane Goldstein from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And let's do a little history. Let's go back, and where'd you come from?
So LEAP started, it's actually our 10-year anniversary this year. So
Happy anniversary.
LEAP was started in 2002 by 5 current and retired police officers from Canada and the United States. And all of them had recognized that the war on drugs was an abject failure. So LEAP believes that by ending drug prohibition and appropriately controlling and regulating all drugs, not just cannabis, that and basically instituting a harm reduction public health model and eliminating sending prisoners or sending people to jail simply for being a drug addict. So there's disagreements about maybe what the post-regulatory model is going to look like, but there's places that we could use for an example. So in Portugal, they've decriminalized all drugs. They're still not necessarily legal, but in Portugal you can have 10 days worth of any drug. And if it doesn't mean that you may not get stopped by the police department, but if you get stopped by the cops and you have any drug on you, the first thing they'll do is they send you to a court of dissuasion. And then they basically look and see if you're a drug addict or not. And if you're not, you get told, hey, don't be out in public, don't be doing stupid, foolish stuff. But if in fact you are a drug addict, then they encourage you. They don't coerce you. There's a big difference. They encourage you to get help for your drug addiction, and they provide all sorts of different resources. Well, interesting enough, Portugal has had this experiment going on for the last 10 years, and what has happened is they've reduced their heroin addiction rate by over 50%. So Portugal had the highest heroin addiction rate in the world, which is one of the reasons why this occurred. So they've reduced their HIV spread of STDs. They've reduced the heroin overdose deaths because people are no longer afraid to call because people aren't going to go to jail, which is one of the reasons why we lose so many people to any type of drug abuse in the United States without Good Samaritan laws. And interesting enough, and there's controversy on both sides, but there was a slight uptick in drug use initially for the adult level, but then it went back down to kind of its normal rate.
That's just the party celebrating the law.
Exactly. And you know what? And that's exactly it. But what's really interesting is the most important place that it has gone down significantly is what about the children? You know, I hear this, what about the children?
Always.
If we end drug prohibition or we legalize marijuana, well, what about the children is, you know, similar to the Netherlands or to other countries that have imposed a harm reduction model of drug use, is what we've seen is in Portugal specifically, all drug use went down by 25% for kids that were between the ages, I think it was like 13 and 19.
Wow.
That's huge. And so Lee basically believes that what we're doing right now is using a singular enforcement tool over a very complex public health drug addiction model. Now, we're not saying that you're going to be soft on crime. So if you're under the influence, I don't care if it's marijuana, prescription drugs, you know, alcohol, whatever it happens to be, if you get in a car and you drive under the influence, there's a law for that.
Yeah.
You'll be prosecuted. If you hurt someone, or if you go out and rape and pillage the neighborhood or steal, whatever it happens to be, we have laws there for that. Simply being a drug addict should not land you a criminal history where you're stigmatized. We have marginalized huge segments of our society. And you know, the Trayvon Martin case is so interesting right now. Probably one of the best ways to prevent future Trayvon Martins is by ending the drug war.
Absolutely.
And so I wish people would connect the dots sometimes because they don't. You know, one of the things that I like to talk about from a policy perspective is the more money that we invest in drug enforcement, the less money that we have to focus on really important public safety issues. Classic examples, probably about a month, maybe 2 months ago, on Anderson Cooper, they talked about that there are 400,000 untested rape kits in the United States, going back decades. Now, I look at that as that's criminal that we have victims, children, men, women, who have been sexually assaulted, and yet their important forensic evidence isn't being tested. And again, Anderson Cooper didn't connect the dots. Why is this happening? Well, one of the reasons this is happening is every time we focus on drug offenders, what people don't realize, it takes a critical resource, because if you have an in-custody drug offender, whether it's marijuana, whether it's methamphetamine, whether it's prescription drugs, doesn't matter, is the lab is forced to test that before a unsolved rape kit, because you have it in custody and it takes priority over those unsolved cases. Since the drug war has started back in the 1970s, we used to solve 9 out of 10 murders. We now solve 6 out of 10. We only solve 6 out of 10 rapes. We only solve 3 out of 10 robberies and assaults, and we only solve 1 out of 10 property crime. And yet, again, is the emphasis on the federal government is through fiscal coercion, through asset forfeiture money because of drug dealing. We get block grants that are specifically based on how many people we arrest for drugs. I mean, the incentives are really messed up.
And prisons are privately owned, so there's money to be made off of every prisoner that you throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they have their lobbyists that want to keep.
There's very strong lobbyists in California. The Prison Guard Union.
Prison Guard Union's huge lobbyist organization. So the big mantra is that I talk about is we have to be smart on crime because, again, public safety is important. But what is public safety focusing on? We're not focusing on the things that really enhance our community's safety. We're focusing on real short-term solutions. So you have a drug addict, in Switzerland or in other countries that use heroin-assisted programs, what they've seen is their property crimes drop tremendously. I mean, between 60 to 90%, because the heroin addict is not having to steal from people to get their heroin. And so they'll never go back. And so because it's being treated as a public health model, the ripple effects on so much more of what our communities need is you're able to divert those fiscal resources to maybe do job infrastructure, better training, those types of things. And then we haven't even talked about the civil libertary issues of the war on drugs. I'm blogging right now for a pitch for ladybud.com magazine. Is a great, it's not just for ladies, but it talks everything from activism and law enforcement to beauty products. So we're a little bit of everything, but
it's a great blog. It's very informative, and it is. Even though it's geared for women, I mean, anyone can listen to it.
Yeah, we have some.
Read it.
We have some great male writers too, but I've blogged now not one but two pieces. So in Texas, Department of Public Safety, Texas State Troopers, in the last 7 months, have done 2 roadside body cavity searches, not one, on females, simply based on the smell of marijuana. And so both of these have been traffic stops. The first one was at nighttime, and my whole thing as a lieutenant, when I retired, I retired as pretty much a patrol commander. And so if you have officers that make a mistake, you ensure that nobody else makes that mistake by clarifying the policy. So the first incident, road stop, traffic stop, allegedly for littering. Male trooper walks up, says he smells marijuana, calls the female trooper. Female trooper basically does roadside body cavity searches on the side of the road, which is illegal. It's unconstitutional. I can't even begin to tell you how many violations that you have there. Well, they file a lawsuit, complain, it becomes public knowledge. They fire the female officer. The male officer is pending discipline. Okay, so 6 months later, in a different part of Texas, I'm sitting there going, okay, so what part of the memo did they not understand? Well, same thing happens, but now it's daylight. Male trooper stops a speeding car. They're coming from the beach. He gets the one of the females out who's in a bathing suit. She says, "Hey, can I get a cover up?" Nope. He humiliates her by making her stand on the side of the road without a bathing suit cover up on there. Brings the other passenger out. They do in fact find a very, very small roach. Female trooper gets called. She conducts a body cavity search inside the vehicle, and both of these are videotaped. See this, and so what that tells you is there's a culture. So my last blog, I've written 2 blogs on both of them, and my last blog was an open letter to the Director of Public Safety, which basically said, you know what, we don't have rogue troopers, we have a rogue policy, and it's not until we engage our law enforcement leaders to recognize, okay, it's commendable that you fired the female trooper. I'm not certain why the male troopers weren't fired. But yeah, they both should have on both cases, but okay, whatever. So I commended them for firing the female trooper immediately. But they're ignoring the policy. Bad policy equals bad outcomes. And there's no amount of training that will prevent unconstitutional policing because of the war on drugs. And so LEAP's position is we have to end it, period, simple, end of story, and then allow a state-by-state solution to develop different regulatory process. So the concern from LEAP, I'll be very honest with you guys, with the cannabis community, is that one of the things that concerns us is that once we get cannabis taken care of, that the community, the cannabis community, will forget the greater picture.
Right.
And there's so much more work to do. It's not just, LEAP really believes in legalization and medical marijuana and patients' rights and everything else, but we just want to encourage you guys
have a broader view
that
as
you
well.
have to have a broader view once you win this little slice of what you guys are going through.
Well, it's a good concern. It's difficult to get a consensus of anything within our medical marijuana community and our legalization community. We're all people that have existed in underground ways for so long that it's difficult to get people to come out into the light and work together, although it's been 6 years that I've been in this game, and 7 for Yami, and we definitely have seen that slow progression toward it and realization that you cannot win these fights without having a cohesive voice to speak with.
Yeah.
And so again, I sort of wonder, LEAP is doing all this great work. It's a slow-moving train. There is no way to sort of just shine the light and go, look how glaringly wrong you all are, just in facts, glaringly wrong you are, and have policy change. It just doesn't seem to work like that.
Well, you know what, and then it goes into the lobbying issue, and it goes into, so many different things. And you had asked a question before the break that I'm kind of spinning right back around to, which is, how effective is LEAP now in countering the public safety message? And we're becoming incredibly important. And so one of the things that we're seeing is, for example, is I know that Steve Downing and I, on behalf of the California LEAP speakers and our national broad base, have been engaging in a lot of activity with letter writing campaigns. And in several recent bills, my letter and Steve Downing's letters were prominently included in the legislative analysis.
That's fantastic. That's great news.
As a counterpoint. And so I think the more we work with the communities, and we're not here attacking the cops. I'm not anti-police. This dissent is important in law enforcement because you never want to be involved in a groupthink type of mentality and process, which is where we're at right now when it comes to the drug war. And so if you really start looking at dissent amongst law enforcement, because we're in this very military organized type, dissent's very difficult to do when you're in the system, but you're starting to see even active duty police officers that are coming out and supporting what we're doing and our process.
And if you live in another part of the United States that's not California, how do you get in touch with LEAP? I mean, it's a nationwide organization, and there's probably groups like ours, like LACA, in other states that are trying, to pass a law or to stop a ban or something, and LEAP came to our...
So,
you want to talk about it after break?
Yeah, we can talk about it after break. We're just getting used to this new system here. But yeah, let's talk about that after break, how people can get in touch with LEAP and get your resources, and we'll go there when we come back. Let's take a little break now. We'll see you on the other side.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FY. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And we are back Talking Marijuana, and we're going to just update how people can get in touch, not just the people that are already in touch with LEAP, but how can people around this country get in touch with your organization and use your resources and use your help?
LEAP's mission is to engage in education across not just our country, but internationally. LEAP now has, I think we're represented by over 5,000 criminal justice, current and former criminal justice professionals across the world. Wow. We have branches in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in Canada, in Brazil. I believe Australia has a branch now as well that's kind of affiliated with us. But we also have over 80,000 members of LEAP that are community members. So I would encourage everybody to become members of LEAP. If you give us money, that's great. If you don't, you can still get on our mailing list. And those numbers are important to us because the more our numbers increase, the broader our power and our influences when we talk to legislators.
The better voice you have.
Absolutely. So LEAP is available on the website at www.leap.cc. And if you belong to a business club, we can come out to Glocka to do a harm reduction presentation. We go to civic engagements. We speak at colleges, and we speak at Republican and Democratic clubs. We're at the Democratic Convention. We're at CPAC. We are everywhere we can be in order to engage not just the community, but policymakers and law enforcement. Interesting enough, we recently asked to do a presentation at the International Association of Chiefs of Police, but they turned us down, so we're appealing it. Because the International Association of Chiefs of Police basically said that what we're doing is not within their mission, which to me is, again, part of that groupthink process.
Absolutely.
It is, so what you're doing at this point is you're just shutting off thinking about any other alternatives, because we're not talking about chaos or an unregulated market. We're talking about promoting smart public safety policies that actually make our officers safer as well.
These are elected officials putting their fingers in their ear and going la 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 la.
Elected or appointed.
Yeah. It's really hard to believe that elected officials wouldn't listen to the voice of the people.
It's so 4 years old.
Yeah, but you know what? That's kind of like the DEA and the reclassification petition. Is a couple months back. Literally, the LA Times came out, and I was so happy to see it because sometimes the LA Times editorial board isn't very good when it comes to cannabis issues. They basically called the DEA a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. And what I like to describe the DEA is they're holding science and medicine hostage to an outdated and unscientific rhetorical version of what they feel our world should look like.
Because they will go away if everybody figured out what it's the computer that you built that's now taken over your whole world and has turned on you. This is going to end in Terminator.
Yeah.
We all see that, right?
Yeah.
You were saying earlier that one of LEAP's important issues in the world, in their existence, is to control and regulate, to show that the policy for public safety is better when you control and regulate. And I'm going to segue that into a little talk just for a few minutes, because we only have a few minutes left here, about Proposition D that recently passed here in the city of Los Angeles. And
really? Because you couldn't tell by looking. Really?
You can't tell by looking.
You can't tell. Yeah, I heard that it passed, but then nothing changed.
In the greater story of all this, we tried to control and regulate. Prop D was a control and regulate issue, and it won. And hopefully, at some point, Los Angeles will get down to the 134 dispensaries that are allowed. But if you look where municipalities have controlled and regulated, crime has gone down.
Absolutely.
The issues that people are worried about do not exist. Right in the middle of Los Angeles is the city of West Hollywood. before all of this nonsense was going on years and years ago, they came up with regulations for their tiny little city in the middle island of Los Angeles. They, for 4 or 5 years now, have had only 4 dispensaries, minimal crime associated with anything to do, and certainly nothing with those dispensaries. So,
but there have been a lot of body cavity searches, but those are recreational.
Those are the patients recreationally.
Those are just to party.
So, and also in other states, there is regulation going on in Colorado right now. They are regulating how legal marijuana is going to look. They're on it right from the beginning. Let's regulate. If there are rules to follow, people can follow those rules. And if they're not following those rules, law enforcement then has a real tool to work to stop that. But in Los Angeles, it hasn't happened. We have over 1,000 dispensaries, and now legally, the law of Los Angeles is that there are only at least 134 that are eligible to remain open should they fit the other parameters of the ordinance that was just passed. We see no movement as of yet toward initiation of Proposition D in Los Angeles.
There's just the off chance that if you go into one of the ones that is not open before 08, that you could get raided and handcuffed. Like,
absolutely.
Just know that. Just try to go to the ones.
We'll be doing a show probably next week or the week after. There's not a lot of information that's coming out now
There's
from the city.
no information coming from the city, none at all whatsoever.
So it would be an hour of just us bitching about it, which we can certainly do.
I think that part of the issue is I think that they're going to have to come up with a plan first and enforcement. And so, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg. So are the 134 pre-ICOs already vetted so they don't have to go back and make certain? That's part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be, what's more important? And if I was, king or queen or police chief or the mayor or the city attorney, I would start by looking at making certain the 134 are all properly vetted, they're clean, they're perfect, and then move on to now we're going to start piecemealing.
Well, that's interesting. I do have a little bit of a rebuttal to that because in 7 years they've gone many stages saying, here's what we're going to do, there's no more allowed, here's what we're going to do, there's no more allowed, here's what we're going to do, there's no more allowed. Within a month, if the city does not close down dispensaries, we will have 200 to 500 new dispensaries in the city because that has been the pattern. It's an absolute shown pattern.
That's
and unfortunately, we only have about 10 seconds to talk about this now because we're out of time and it's a huge issue. Yeah. We'll definitely devote some time on this show to it, but it's a bumblefuck at the moment.
Yeah, that is.
And
it's horrible.
I didn't realize they were popping up that.
They're popping up all over the place. One popped up in my corner, one popped across the street from there.
So we're going to say goodbye for this week. Thank you, Diane, so much for coming and talking to us. We'll have you back, and as things progress, we know we'll have more to talk to you.
Let's get one more plug for your website and how people can help.
www.leap.cc. You can go there, be a member, donate money if you want.
You don't have to be former law enforcement.
You don't have to be former law enforcement to be a member at all. We have lots and lots of community supporters.
Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Pura vida.
Pura vida.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FY. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi everybody, Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.